Well, Sarah, we finally have made it. Um, I think it's been about going on 4 months of canceling and rescheduling.
I
But
know two ships passing in the night, but it's delightful to be here with you and your audience as well. So it's great to catch up.
I'm not sure if I have an audience, but it's
Yes, I know you do. Absolutely, you do.
your episode number 10. I was actually waiting to have 10 recorded episodes before actually sharing it with my email list. I mean, I haven't really done like a big marketing, kind of push to get it out there. And I didn't want to do it like one or two episodes. So after this, I will do I'm going to try to build that audience up. Um,
Love it.
and, uh, and, my goal with this is, long form, whatever tangents, directions it takes us. It's more about you than helium, but helium is part of you. So we will, of course, talk about that. But it is exposing, uh, you know, who Sarah Hill is. Going back to your roots, and you have a long and very fruitful career that's not over. But it's a great point to kind of share what you've done so far. And I was doing a little bit of preparation, and you and I have actually never had. I mean, we've had some brief talks, but we've never had a really long, deep conversation about your background. So I've been looking forward to this. And you're one of the few people that I know who's had a very long career in journalism, which is both one of my older passions and where I've had a lot of interest over the years. Um, but let's you're Missouri born and bred, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Born in Canton, Missouri, population 1,500. Salute for all of the older folks who used to watch Hee Haw. Yes, grew up in a rural community, married the boy next door, quite literally.
Really?
We came to the University of Missouri. I came here for the
Wait,
journalism.
you're going too fast. Wait,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yes.
Sorry.
Now, when did you meet this boy?
I actually he grew up across the street from me, and he used to shoot. He had five brothers and sisters that didn't have a whole lot of supervision, and he would shoot real bow and arrows at my dad in the garden when he was working out
Just
in
for
our
fun?
garden. So when I said I was bringing Robbie Hill home for dinner, my dad was like, "Hold on, Robbie Hill from like the Hellion from across the street." So anyway, he grew up and to be a wonderful man and spouse and father. But yeah,
So
we
how
both grew
old
up in.
how old were you when you guys? I mean, did you know him like growing up when you were 10 or something, or not
Yeah, I
until you're?
knew him growing up as the kid that would throw walnuts at me, climb our tree and throw walnuts at me. And then we started dating when I was 17, and he's a little bit older, but yeah, from dating, then we went to University of Missouri. So a
I mean,
long and
that's
meandering path, but yeah.
yeah, but that's rare to. I mean, to marry the person that you grew up with next door.
I know, yeah, and it's now been,
Maybe
more
it's
than
not rare in a
30.
town of 1,500. Maybe that's
Yeah,
the
36 years of marriage. So, yeah,
congratulations.
that's a long time. So I've known
I
him
just
more than.
celebrated 26 a couple weeks ago.
Congrats, congrats. And in today's day and age, that's, a real testament. But he is, obviously my life partner and, your co-founder. Before you have a real co-founder in a company, your family is your co-founder. So he's definitely a great partner in Helium as well.
Absolutely. So are you were you an only child, or did you have siblings?
No, I have a sister who is her career was in elementary education, and so she taught for decades, and then she went to work for the Missouri State Teachers Association, and uh, she lives in Canton as well, and so she's about 2.5 years older than I am.
And what about your parents? Are they still around?
My parents, both, they are still around, and we recently moved them to Columbia to be closer to us, as they're aging and needing better access to healthcare than that rural community that they, knew for so very long, which was a great decision. Shortly after we moved them here, they got sick. My dad was diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Oh, I'm
My
sorry.
mother recently had a heart condition and had a large blockage in her LAD artery. So they're doing well now, thank goodness, and really hoping that their health continues for the future. But brought them closer to us, and we love that. We love having them closer.
And you've had a hell of a year yourself. On top of that,
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I had a heart attack out of the blue, a freak heart attack in December of 2024. So, about a year and a half ago, and yeah, just took the wind out of my sails. I was out of commission for about 6 months, but by the grace of God, I survived, and my team just stepped up, and some real amazing leaders were grown out of that. They stepped up and continued to carry the torch for the company. But yes, would encourage everyone listening to get a heart calcium score test, and specifically women who their symptoms do not mimic natural center chest pain, to really be aware of that. I'm happy to go into more about how that happened, and things that men and women should look for. But yeah, I was a perfectly healthy woman who worked out with a trainer 2 times a week. I had no high blood pressure, no high cholesterol, perfect blood work. I'm not overweight. I don't smoke. I eat well, and I had a major heart attack. So it just goes to
so
show
you,
you
you
that
do
your
everything
genes
well
load.
in healthcare and take perfect care of yourself and still get screwed.
Absolutely. And part of that is your genes. Your genes
Yeah.
load the gun, but your environment fires it. And so, stress, obviously, my business is stress management, right? But sometimes, the cobbler has no shoes. And, there was a lot going on with our company, and, good things. But, ultimately you burn the candle at both ends, that sometimes your body just revolts. And, some of that can actually cut off. Stress can literally kill you. It can cut off the blood flow to your heart, which is what happened in my case.
Let's can you share a bit about growing up and what your parents did and what it was like growing up with them and your older sister?
Sure. I love this. Nobody usually, most people ask questions about the company, but they never ask about our life growing up. So this is fascinating. Yes, my
Well,
both of my parents
it's all that makes the person, right? And I mean, I think it actually speaks a lot to your company later, how you build it, how you run it, values, things like that.
sure. So both of my parents were teachers. My dad was an economics professor at the local Culver Stockton College in Canton, Missouri, a local college that is up on a hill in this very small town, and it's beautiful. And then my mother is also they're both retired, but she was a nursing professor for many years, and she worked as a nurse, a pediatric nurse, and a maternity nurse.
And so, how did that how was that instilled on you and your sister in terms of education growing up? And was there a high bar expected?
As far as education, I had the most wonderful parents in the world who, giving you positive feedback, giving you constructive criticism. And in growing up in the small town where we were, not everyone went to college, right? It was a farming community. In the summers, you would detassel corn, and everyone worked. When you were a teenager, that was like expected. When you turned, I think I started working when I was 15, waiting tables at a local riverboat dinner theater. called the Golden Eagle Riverboat in Canton, Missouri.
Is it
But
still around?
no, it's not. But my husband worked as a dishwasher there as well, but learned a lot in working at that young age. You know, because I came from a family with modest means. They were both teachers and educators, and so it was expected that you would work.
Well, and obviously it influenced both you and your sister. I mean, your sister went into elementary, and I saw, and you've done some college teaching as well during the
Mhm.
year. So obviously they passed that along to you.
Yeah, they did. And I thoroughly enjoyed teaching at the Missouri School of Journalism. I was an adjunct for them for many years. And I think I get a lot of that from my dad. My dad today, still has students that I meet out in the community who come up to me and talk about, what a wonderful educator he was, or my mom, um, you know, uh, in everything that she taught all of her students about nursing and having babies and how to deliver babies and all those wonderful things. So yeah, definitely had teaching in my blood. And you're really a lifelong teacher when you're running your own company as well. Particularly, with the younger employees who come through our doors, what a great gift to be able to not only share your knowledge but also learn from them as well. And in today's day and age with AI and all of the other digital tools that are moving so quickly, I love to learn from our employees.
So was journalism something you were interested in high school, or did you not kind of come to it until you got into college?
So funny story, when I was in 7th grade, there was a boy who came to my science class and was trying to recruit people to the local newspaper called Tiger Tracks, and he was looking for a sports reporter. So somebody who could go watch the basketball games and then write up a recap about it. Well, I didn't want anything to do with sport. I could care less about sports. But the guy who came to talk with us was very handsome. he and he had on he just got done out of basketball practice, and this cute boy comes in and is asking for volunteers. I'm like, yeah, I'll write for the school newspaper. So to make a long story short, that cute boy who came to try to recruit people to write for the newspaper turned out to be Robbie Hill, who would eventually become my husband. So he always remarks that he was the one who
Well,
launched
you
my
you just
journalism
you just had a
career.
you you were like, you worked with him at the riverboat. He was the dishwasher.
Right. Yeah.
You were kind of worked for him sort of for the newspaper in high school. I mean, it was I guess you just couldn't get away from him, it seems.
Yeah. Detasseling corn or whatever. But yeah, it was a
And
great
and
experience.
Bobby Hill is his
I
name. So
yeah, Robbie
just
Hill.
so classically, I mean, I'm sure I can't imagine how often he gets he gets a second look when he says I'm Bobby Hill.
Yeah, well, he's Rob now. He's
Okay.
got only his old friends know him as Robbie. But yeah, he launched my journalism career. I developed a love of writing through that, and in order to work my way through college at Missouri State University, the first university that I attended, I worked at a local radio station, a local NPR affiliate, and I would cover city council meetings and other, you know. Uh, non-exciting stuff, but it was a paycheck and it got me caught by the journalism bug. Now, at that particular university, they did not have a journalism program. They had a communications program. And, the Missouri School of Journalism is the oldest and best journalism school in the world. That's debatable. I'm sure there's others that would claim that they're the best. But Missouri's has a storied history with Walter Williams, and is truly a unique model because they own television stations and radio stations. So before people leave and graduate from that school, they have this rich resume reel in order to share with employers, and they've already worked in the market for 2 years as a working a television news reporter or anchor. So I transferred to University of Missouri, got a job at worked in television in Springfield as well, as a associate producer. And then when I transferred to the J School at Mizzou, I worked at a local news talk radio station covering again the city beat. We covered also every car, chasing ambulances, the police scanners going on in the newsroom, and you're listening to it, and you basically cover what the police are doing. But continued to work throughout my college career, and then graduated and went to my first gig was at a CBS affiliate in Jefferson City, Missouri, in the capital city. And I was the
That was KRCG.
KRCG. Yeah.
So you wait. What year did you graduate?
I graduated in 93.
90. Okay,
During the flood of
we were
93.
at the exact same. I graduated in 94, and I was actually a year behind. Yeah, we were in school at the exact
Yeah.
same period.
It was the flood of
Um,
93. It was the
and I
first.
remember. Well, it's funny you talk about that because and I did a lot of journalism in high school and college, and started a news department at our radio station. But I remember, one of the highlights was we did an on campus canvassing during the Clinton
Right.
election night, and that was just a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. And during 93, with the flood of 93, all of our camera equipment was flooded. We were wading through just awful, awful
I'm not familiar with
trauma.
the flood of '93.
Yeah. And
That was in Missouri, a significant
mhm.
flood.
Yeah, but it was a good, a good learning experience at KRCG. I was also, in addition to the reporter, I was also the noon anchor and also the producer of the show. So, you would go, you'd come in, you would produce the show, write it all up yourself, including run your own teleprompter. And then after you were done anchoring the noon newscast, you'd go out and shoot a story. You were your own videographer, your own editor, your own producer.
So,
We called
so,
it a one man band, right? And
well,
then
let me ask you
you
something.
turn the stories for the later newscast.
Did you find early on, even in college, that you liked being on air, whether it was voice or video, or did you prefer being production and writing more for other broadcasters, or you liked both equally?
Yeah, I loved to write first and foremost, and that's why I really leaned into the reporting and the producing. Anchoring, for me was just, I mean, sometimes it wasn't just reading off a teleprompter. I mean, there were many times when we did wall to wall coverage during tornado alerts or whatever. During 9/11, we were on the air live, wall to wall, something
Oh yeah,
crazy like 8 or 10 hours, like, pretty much the whole entire day. So, I mean,
and
some of that I
you were
found
doing the
challenging.
6 o'clock and 10 o'clock news.
Yeah, and eventually I transitioned from, they moved us around at KRCG. I did the noon, the 5, and then I did the 6 and the 10. And then at KOMU, I did all shifts. I mean, I pinch hit it on the morning show when they needed help. I did a noon. I did a special social media cast. And then I also anchored 6 and 10, 5, 6, and 10 o'clock news. So
And you had a program called People You Should Know.
yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
what was that about exactly?
It was just people you should know, basically. Um, uh, yeah, I liked the people
That's
features.
that's
I
that's
liked
what I should have called this podcast had I
you
known
could you call it
before.
PYSK, but I liked learning about. There's just some amazing, like really amazing people that you don't know their stories really, and I was just blessed with the ability to get to learn these, amazing stories, what they're doing, people who've triumphed over challenges. And it was a feature I cultivated and kind of made it my own and allowed me to lean into that style of storytelling I liked, where the words really married with the pictures in unique ways.
Now, did you have a career plan? Was part of your interest to move to a larger market, or did you always kind of decide that you wanted to kind of stay in the within Missouri, and you liked where you were?
The goal in television back then, 20 years ago, was always to move to a larger market, because the larger the market, the more zeros behind your salary. But that changes when you have a couple kids, you have a school that you like, your husband has a job that he enjoys. And excuse me, your your parents are close in Missouri as well. So probably about 5 years in, I dropped looking for that next thing and realized that the Midwest was my home. There was incredible stories to tell right in that community from natural disasters. These news affiliates had a decent budget that they could send us, all around the world to do special features. We went in with the trauma teams in the aftermath of the tsunami in Sri Lanka and Indonesia. We've been to Guatemala to do stories,
Were you in
Zambia.
Aceh?
I'm sorry?
Did you go to Aceh in
No.
Indonesia, which
Um,
was kind of wiped off the map from the
I don't
tsunami?
believe so. And, that was back in, what is that, 2004
Yeah,
or ish.
it's a long
I
time
don't
ago.
remember the exact community that we went, but one of the communities in Sri Lanka or Indonesia, this one particular village had lost everyone that they know. The whole village was what was wiped out essentially, and there was one woman who was happened to be that day studying in Colombo, in I think it was in Sri Lanka, which is a populated area. She came back to her rural village, and everyone that she knew. Can you imagine that level of trauma? Everyone that she knew on that day was gone. All of her friends, all of her family had been washed away, and that was just eye opening for me in interviewing her. And I even asked her a couple different times because I didn't think. I was like, hold on. Are you saying, yeah, I thought it was like getting lost in translation. And I asked the interpreter to ask her the question again. And after she had, reiterated a third time, I lost everybody I knew that day. I was just like, we have no idea that, what they went through. And that I'm sure that mental health emergency still continues in Sri Lanka and Indonesia today, from what those people
Yeah,
went through. But yeah, that was very eye opening for me in going in with those trauma teams. Not the level of devastation, the level of personal devastation that was just mind boggling.
yeah, it's hard to imagine. What I'm just curious a little bit. What was the decision making to move from KRCG to KOMU?
Primarily for my family. It was closer to where I was living. I was living in Columbia and commuting back and forth every day. And uh, KRCG was great for me, great people, great management, but wanted to be closer to my kids. My kids were young, and so the idea of not having to work the night shift, where you go in at 1 and you get home at 11 p.m. or midnight, after the commute, it was appealing. So I spent a little bit of time at home with the kids, and then went to work at KOMU, the NBC affiliate in Columbia, Missouri, doing I think it was a noon and 5 o'clock shows at that time.
And that was an NBC affiliate, you said.
Yeah,
Okay.
NBC affiliate. Yeah.
And so I am curious about Congo's in the news again. Uh, when did what was the story that you did there, and where were you exactly?
So we went in with Google, actually, and Google was doing immersive documentaries, and so we did an immersive documentary. And our company before it started was called Story Up, as some of you may remember. And we went out with real 360-degree 3D cameras and shot some stories about triumph, tribulation. And this particular story was in Congo about solar energy and
Okay,
how solar energy was enabling these people to. There were poachers of mountain gorillas, and through this solar energy, they had the ability to have better communication, to cut down on the mountain gorillas. And the whole premise behind the documentary is called Journey of Gold, was where the metals for your electronics come from. And in a lot of these places, the people who are mining your metal are not treated very well at all. And so this was a piece where we went in and enabled people to be in the mind where the gold, where the metal was being mined, meet the people who are, doing the work as well. So yes, very, very eye opening for my team to meet the people there. And also, this was relatively new technology that we're shooting in the middle of Congo. We also did the same thing in the middle of the Amazon. One of our company's first documentaries that we were retained for was in the middle of of the Amazon rainforest. Literally did not have a roof over our head for 10 days. It had a thatched, roof, no electricity, no running water. You were putting charcoal pellets in the water to purify it. So in a very remote area. And I remember thinking, here we are with these cameras that are literally duct taped together, 360-degree cameras duct taped together. We didn't have proper rain gear. We came with like shorts, and we needed long sleeves because of the mosquitoes and the anacondas and the jaguars that could go out at night. And I'll never forget, it was with someone from Google who I had just met, and they had underwrote the documentary. And in the middle of the night, she turns to me and asks, "Will you go out to the bathroom with me?"
yeah,
In the middle of the night, because there was no bathroom, and
yeah.
you had to be careful because there were jaguars out there. And then
What year was
after,
this?
oh, I don't even remember, maybe 2016 or 2015.
But
But
both
after you
Congo
went,
and Amazon.
yeah, I think they were even in the same year. It was it was a crazy year. But I remember they said after you go to the bathroom, you then and they gave you a shovel and you had to bury it so
Right.
that the jaguars would not come smell that and come eat with you. So here I just met this woman, and we're out in the middle of the Amazon shoveling in the middle of the night. I mean, it was just a crazy experience, but the stories that came from that was really educational for me on how you tell stories in this sphere, because for decades I had told them through a fixed frame where you had the ability to show the user what you wanted them to see. And it was incredibly disarming in these immersive documentaries that you didn't have control of the frame. Your user had control of the frame, and they got to decide what they were looking at. So
Well, so
um,
tell me more about this transition you went through from KMOU to Veterans United Network and more immersive storytelling.
Yeah, I was the chief storyteller at Veterans United for about 3 years. Incredible company, and it enabled me to, kind of detox for a few years from the news business while still exercising my storytelling chops. So I told stories about veterans, Veterans United and Veterans United Foundation. The employees of Veterans United, which is a mortgage company, has an incredible foundation that, distributes tens of millions of dollars. And so I had the lucky job of telling those amazing stories. And during that time, I became involved and helped found the Honor Flight program in Columbia, Missouri, because we had been doing a bunch of stories in the news business about these veterans who were going on real flights to see their memorials. And so at Veterans United, with the Honor Flight program, a lot of these veterans were calling us saying they weren't able to physically travel to see their memorials in Washington, D.C. And so, as storyteller technologists, what skills do I have that could enable them to feel like they were there, even though they weren't there? And so we developed the Honor Everywhere program in 2013, 2012, or 2013 with Google Cardboard. We shot all of the videos in 360 3D with 24 different cameras set up in an array. It was nuts. And that's how I got into virtual reality in using it for these veterans tours and noticing that these experiences were impacting physiology. They weren't just watching the experiences, they were feeling them.
And the experiences in Congo and Amazon, was that while you were at Veterans United Network, or that came after?
No, that was it. That was with Story Up. Story Up in 2015, 2016. And Story
Oh,
Up
right.
was a brand
You went from
studio
Story Up.
for,
You changed Story Up to Helium.
right, correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And the legal name of Helium
Story Up
is Story
off
Up
your
Inc.
LinkedIn. So
Yeah. The legal name of our company is still Story Up Inc., but we just changed, we converted from a brand studio basically that was doing documentaries to the Helium product. And it's had
so
many, and Helium has had many iterations over the years.
okay. So tell me just a little bit. I mean, I'm just curious about the transition from Veterans United Network to starting Story Up. What was that? Was that kind of all planned? Was it more um, circumstantial
Yeah.
on what was going on at the time?
Circumstantial. With these veterans, I went to a friend of mine who's a neurofeedback specialist, and he was actually my husband's business partner at the time. My husband used to be a psychologist, and he had a psychology practice. He's now in real estate, but his business partner was really into doing brain mapping and seeing how different things impact physiology. And I was telling him, like, in these veterans who are watching these experiences, they look so relaxed inside the goggles. They take off the goggles. Their body is like, a wet rag, and very, very relaxed. And they say, I like how I felt in that experience. Can I watch it again? And so, I'm a journalist, naturally curious person. I asked Dr. Jeff Tarrant, what do you think is happening to their physiology? That makes them feel this way. What is it about, this immersive media? And can we, what? And he said, well, we should test it. So he started doing brain maps on different experiences to see how they impacted the brain. And we started live streaming the users' bioinformatics and started tying those bioinformatics to the content. So the content was being changed by different shifts in brain hertz via like an EEG headband or via your heart rate. So we were using your biometrics as an input of sorts in order to downshift the nervous system and allow the user to become more self-aware of those different shifts. And so it was not a linear path anyway. It was like I've always had for years what's called nerdy playdates. And I'll have to invite you to one, but it's where two technologists get together and you play, much like two children would play with Tinker Toys. It's, hey, I've got this VR stuff, and I'm a storyteller, and I'm passionate about telling these stories in the sphere and its impact. And then, his toys are, well, he's a clinician, and he does brain maps. And is there a way that my peanut butter can I'll work with your jelly? And so anyway, it was a beautiful collaboration of a scientist and a technologist and a storyteller coming together to allow people to better realize that their thoughts have power, their heart has power to control things, not only in the virtual world, in the real world as well. So that's a very nonlinear path, but it
What so
started with
so did
covering veterans
so
trying to
did you
solve their problem.
sorry.
No,
So
sorry.
did you start that research with Dr. Taryn while at the Veterans United Network?
And thinking back, no, I was at Healium when we started. I think I was at Healium when we started. I mean, the virtual tours with the veterans, we started that in like 2013. And
So
then
wait,
later on, started
did
getting
Helium already exist before you joined it, or
no,
you started
Helium did
Helium?
not exist before. I started Story Up Inc., which is Helium.
Okay.
Yeah, in
I guess
2015.
where I'm trying to lead you to and trying to get to is what was it that made you start? What was it that said, you know what, I should start a company. This is an opportunity. I'm going to start Story Up and go, head first into this.
Yeah. So I was the chief storyteller at Veterans United, and we were doing these virtual tours for veterans, and just seeing the impact on their faces. I mean, I told how many hundreds, thousands of stories over the years, but for them to take off the goggles at the time, even to take the cardboard off their face, visibly, overcome with emotion, a very visceral reaction to this kind of media. I was fascinated with wanting to tell more of those stories, more and more and more. So I remember going to my boss, Brant Bukowski. He's an amazing man and mentor. And I remember saying, hey, this is the next thing. We need to buy all of these 360 cameras. We need to go out and do a bunch of documentaries, because this is like the next thing. And people, it's more engaging and whatever. And I remember him saying, Sarah, we are a mortgage company. I love your enthusiasm, but we need to tell stories about the foundation. And it just, it was this little voice in my ear of, I really wanted to tell stories in the sphere and in immersive. And so, I stepped out on faith, and I, went to him to tell him, hey, just so this has been a great experience, but I can't get this out of my head that I need to go do this. I need to tell more stories about this. I don't actually know what the path ahead is, but I'm going here, and I'm starting my own company. And he ended up becoming an investor in our
Yep.
company.
Okay.
And so yeah, that was the path. But it started with creating these virtual tours for veterans, noticing it was impacting their physiology, and then uh, formed Story Up in about 2015. It was named something different for a year or so, and then we formed the Helium product shortly after
And
the brains.
how'd you connect up with Google, or did they reach out to you?
So I had a rich relationship with Google from the days of Google Hangouts. I was the first broadcaster to use their Hangouts on air. So whenever I would do a live broadcast, I would have two earpieces. And this was, before Zoom was a thing, right? This was in, I don't know, 2010, 2011.
People
And
forget
in
video
one
conferencing
earpiece,
existed before Zoom.
right, right. I would have one earpiece in my ear for my producer, and then the other one would be the audience that could talk with me during the live newscast. And so I'll always remember, delivering the news. And then I would hear an audience member who was in one of our hangouts, behind the scenes on the air. We called it a virtual couch, who would be like, actually, that's billion, not million. And I was able to correct that in real time because I had this voice, and I had literally the audience in my ear who was giving me real time feedback on what I was saying. So
That's an
yeah,
interesting
it was
application. Yeah.
really eye opening. And Hangouts on Air at the time was like a broadcast stick in the middle of a crowdsourcing tool that was YouTube, Google Plus at the time. It did that
Yeah.
kind of
They really
live
lost that
streaming
opportunity.
videos.
I don't know how they fumbled social so badly. Uh, but
Well, it was a great face-to-face platform. The whole beauty of that platform was their Hangouts.
yeah,
All of a sudden, you were, meeting people from around the world, and it just really shrunk the geographic distance between all of us. And also, we use video chat all the time in our company, and it clued me in that you don't have to have a brick and mortar place on one of the coasts to be a tech company. You can form a tech company in the middle of Missouri, but yet you can be in all of those places in a video call. And I learned that very, valuable lesson through the news business, and, inviting people to our virtual couch from all over the world.
very, very cool. I have to ask you, just when you, because I have not, but when you were in Congo, did you get to go up to, I think it's Virunga, and see
Yeah.
the mountain
We
gorillas?
stayed we actually stayed in Virunga National Park.
Okay.
And
I'm very jealous.
yeah, it was eye opening. We actually went out and were with the mountain gorillas in the jungle, in the middle of the jungle, and went with the people who would talk with them. And um,
I can't believe. I mean, I worked in conservation for 10 years, and I didn't. I mean, I was in Brazil, but I never made it to the Amazon, and I never made it to the Congo. We had an early office in Kinshasa, but I mean,
mhm.
Congo then and still today is not the safest of places.
Yeah, and it wasn't there as well. We were with a UN escort, and the guides that we went in with the mountain gorilla. We had our big 360 cameras. That when you started recording, you had this sphere of 6 to 12 cameras that their lights would start flashing, and so it was very risky because you had to place the camera down, right, and then you had to go hide so that you didn't have to stitch yourself out of the scene. So you had to go hide behind a bush. And there's this mountain gorilla that's, 6 feet away, and there's flashing lights in front of it. And I mean, what is it going to do? Is it going to charge the camera? Is it going to charge you? Like, in hindsight, it wasn't a very good choice to go out and do that. But wow, to be in the natural habitat, to see them, and you're just feet away from them, no fence or anything, they're in their natural environment, was very, very eye-opening. One of the places that we went to hide, mountain gorillas like a lot of red ants, and so you would always get poison ivy or whatever because you're behind a bush hiding so that you don't get picked up in the 360 camera. And all of a sudden I look at Ken Elias, who was my videographer at the time. He is stripping naked. He's taking off his shirt, his pants, and I'm like, what is going on? He's jumping up and down, freaking out. I'm like, calm down. You're going to upset the mountain gorilla. He's going to like charge at you. And I look over, he had large red ants crawling up his clothing. And so anyway, a lot of stories from being out in the trenches of shooting 360 video.
Are those videos still online?
Yeah, I think they still are on the Story Up YouTube channel. You can probably find them.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I'll have to add those to the notes.
Yeah, Journey of Gold, from Story Up is what that one was called. And then, the Amazon ones, there were two of them, and they're called Are You Listening? And we spent, you know, uh, 10 days I think, with the Munduruku tribe. And that was just, yeah, it was very eye opening. And we showed them virtual reality. They painted us like they paint their native people. It was just, a very delightful experience, despite the rough terrain of, not having amenities, like not be sleeping out under, a thatch roof with the anacondas and jaguars.
Yeah, but a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's shift to Helium. 10 years old now, and maybe walk me through a little bit about the early years and developing the product, finding the right product fit, finding your audience and your customers.
Mhm. Yeah, so we started as a wellness product, and we sold to VA hospitals. We still sell to VA, and also schools. We sold to sports teams. We won the NFL Innovation Prize, which set us on a path with sports teams and areas of stress, basically. And as you mature as a company, you're always optimizing your product market fit. And so and we were selling to consumers, right? Basically, we were selling to anyone who was willing to use the kits. And as we matured, we found that the people who were really pulling it from our hands were the clinics. They were using it the most. They would get, obviously really upset if the app was down, like it was like, water to them, because the patients that were coming in their office, they're looking for some non-pharmacological solution. And so Helium provided that. And, our product is unique because it's allowing the people to see their feelings in a very visual way by changing the content that is quantitative data that you don't always get from talk therapy. So we pivoted the company. We killed our consumer product about 2 years ago, and pivoted to a clinical product. And actually, this week, we just announced a couple different things. The largest VA deployment in its history for in-home kits, for in-home virtual reality mental health kits. And then also we announced we're FDA registered now as a 510K exempt biofeedback medical device, which
Wow.
opens up doors, new opportunities. Billing clinics are getting reimbursed for using Helium, and those are our people. And Helium Clinical, we still have Helium Wellness, but our projects are focused on growing that Helium Clinical. The people who are really pulling it from our hands, they appreciate the beautiful stories, the beautiful content, and not only that, but the neurofeedback and the biofeedback. Unique integrations that we provide. I mean, inside our software, you can literally hold out your hands and see your feelings coming out of your hands. What other product allows you to interact with your own brain patterns and heart rate in that very, very, very visual way? And so we're excited about growing that, and about the new milestones ahead as a exempt medical device.
So where do you see the adaptation for the company and the products? And we're going through such an upheaval with AI, and we're seeing maybe you have an opinion on the state of the VR market today, and maybe it's impacting you, maybe it's not impacting you. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Uh, and are you seeing AI glasses as the next opportunity or wave? Where's your thinking on all this?
So when you say the VR market, certainly from an investor perspective, VR is not even XR isn't the sexy thing, but from a value perspective, for instance, Meta's announcements with Horizon Managed Services, that really hasn't impacted us at all because we're not selling to gamers and we're not selling to consumers. That's not our market, and we've never relied on Meta or even the app stores for people to discover us. We sell to clinics, like they're not on, Meta's app stores. We find each other in other ways. So that really hasn't impacted us. In fact, since that announcement, our business has just accelerated. But that's been from us doing hand-to-hand combat from us, and also our we have distributors all around the world from Australia, Middle East. We have
So
clinics
what's
in
what's
Costa
caused it to
Rica.
accelerate?
A lot of those resellers in those different areas, and also distributors as well. We have a number of distributors.
And so where are you? What are you thinking about in terms of product development for the next couple of years, or is it more about just trying to grow your customer base today?
Both. You don't have one without the other. So as far as what's in our product pipeline, it's very lengthy, and one of the things that we need to cross off, because we are in a lot of these different geographic regions, is a variety of languages, and that can be done through AI. And so our path on a lot of these product features have been shortened with the new technology and tools that are coming about that can enable not only multiple languages, but better summaries, better clinical summaries for our clinicians, and just basically making our product more delightful and easier to use.
Okay. Um, so I guess maybe towards a little bit of closing, how how's the heart attack kind of affected your day to day, and are you doing things differently than you did 18 months ago, or are you still kind of have your same routine, and is there something special you're having to be careful about?
Certainly when you went through a life-threatening event, you have to change. You cannot continue to do things as you did before. I mean, I was healthy before, healthy as far as I thought I was healthy, but as far as burning the candle at both ends, stress is like smoking, a six pack, or drinking, a six pack a day. Stress is bad. There's no such thing as good stress. So I do things differently in that I delegate a lot more, and I learned that my incredible team that stepped up, and some amazing leaders that come out sometimes when you step back. And as leaders, sometimes you need to do that, so that other people can stand in the gap and actually grow, and you can optimize your team. I'm not recommending anyone out there to go have a heart attack and peace out for a number of months, but the things that I do differently are as it relates to delegation and stress. And I really had to teach myself that there are balls, all the balls that you're juggling, there are balls that bounce and balls that break. And so I've gotten really strategic about those balls that will bounce if you drop them.
What's uh what keeps you up at night these days, if anything?
What keeps me up at night, I like to ensure my employees are happy and healthy, that what they're finding in their work is challenging and fulfilling. So, in Healium, our most important resource is our team. We are all here, in office in Columbia, Missouri. We see each other every single day, and we like each other's company. So that doesn't necessarily keep me up, but I have that on my mind a lot. As a small team, we're also thinking about how can we leverage AI even more to optimize, some of the manual tasks that we're doing now. That's all, always in front of our mind. We worry a lot about, data privacy. We collect biometric data, which is a sensitive data set. So there are a lot of, in a HIPAA compliant, GDPR ready, NIST aligned, ISO certified back end that you have to ensure are in place. And the technology is moving so fast that it changes every single day. And this is from someone who's consumes a lot of information, just as my background is a news reporter, that it's tough to keep up with all of that, and not only keep up with that at the pace of innovation, but to be able to keep up with the data privacy that's responsible for ensuring that you have ethical decision making with AI. So that's one of the things that keeps me up at night is how do we move fast, but also move fast at the speed of trust. There's a brilliant thinker called Dick Flanagan with Casey Digital Health in Kansas City. And he has a great line that he says, healthcare moves at the speed of trust. And that's really true. And that's what I think a lot of CEOs in immersive in any company really are balancing, is how do we move quickly and ensure that we don't lose our customers' trust in that quick movement.
And I guess to finish up, what are you most excited about for the rest of 2026?
For the rest of 2026, we are super excited. We just added a whole new honor tab to the Healium platform. So all of those World War II, Vietnam, Korea, Women's Memorial, we just added some new content about the Medal of Honor Heritage Center on there. The USS Nimitz out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, which is close to being decommissioned, but yet it's always alive inside virtual reality. We are adding new wearable integrations all the time, and we'll announce those in the next coming months. We integrate with the Muse 2 EEG headband, Apple Watch, Samsung Galaxy Watch. And if you've never experienced seeing your feelings emanating from your hands, it's a very unique experience that makes you more self-aware of how you need to downshift. So I would encourage anyone to, go to their local clinic or therapist, tell them about Healium, and try it for yourself.
Well, Sarah, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm
Likewise,
glad.
it's
I'm
great
glad.
to take a deep dive with you.
Yeah, I'm glad we finally was able to get it on the calendar, and we're almost at an hour on the dot. So I think a good time to close out. But Sarah, I look forward to seeing you next, wherever that might be, and I wish you well for the rest of the year.
Absolutely. And as a bit of advice to all your other companies that are watching this, sometimes when people pull away from the technology, that's a signal to you that maybe you should take a step forward. So keep going in everything that you guys are doing and building with immersive.
Great thought. Thank you.